I mean, Spo always says it. The second night of back-to-back it stands for something. It's not everything, but it stands for something to be able to come, from Indiana last night, land, tough, just embarrassing loss in our organization. We thought that was a horrible loss last night to fly here and still come up with a game plan. And the game plan was really just to come out and play harder, obviously play smart, but play harder than them, outwork them. And we did that tonight. I thought every time we have a second night of a back-to-back, it feels like we come out with the right energy.
What did it mean to just fight back in that fourth quarter to keep it and break the little schneid there from the weekend?
Man, it felt amazing. It just reminds this team what we're capable of when we really lock in and commit to one another. Thought everyone it really came together at halftime. It was great.
What happened at halftime? Because Spo was saying too, halftime kind of turned you guys up a notch for the second half.
Yeah, man, halftime happened. It was great, man. It was one of our best halftimes ever. I want to say since I've been here at least. Tyler and Bam really brought us together during that time for sure.
What was the message at that time? If you could expand as much as you can.
Man, get a win by any means necessary. It was great. It was great to see those two really pull us through. When those two are going, we feel unstoppable. So when them two are on the same page, it was great. We just followed their lead, seriously. So it was good to see.
And Jaime, obviously, this is a much-needed win after the two back-to-back losses. But now it gets next game up, knowing that you guys are still battling for seeding in the standings. How important is it to build off of what you guys were able to do in those last 2 minutes of this game?
Just continue to go. Build on this. It's a great win, great starting point to propel us forward to the rest of these games. I don't know how many we have. What is it, 6 games?
6 games left.
Yeah, 6 games left. They're all going to be dogfights, so we got to get the dogs ready.
That fourth quarter by Tyler, those key defensive plays and just the shooting getting going, what did you see from him there?
Yeah, great. I know he had some great box outs, some great rebounds down the stretch. Obviously, it's some big shots, which were definitely needed. And I think just as a whole, man, we really buckled down in the two defense, and it was just great, man. Great team basketball, just great overall win. I think it might have been our best win of the year.
Tyler, you had that point. You were 1 of 8 on threes. It even looked like you were hesitant a couple of times when you passed up and maybe even had the turnovers. But at the moments of truth, you stepped into those 2 last threes that you took. Was it just a matter of, at that point in the game, you just have to have the confidence? And can you sort of take us through the confidence you had in those 2 shots?
I was open. Both were great looks. I was able to knock them down. I rely on my work. I shoot those same shots every day, multiple times a day. So it was 2 great looks. Jaime hit me on one, and then Pella hit me on one. But it started on the defensive end. We were able to get stops and then run in transition, what led to the 2 threes.
Tyler, why, other than the commitment to conditioning and all the stuff that they have preached forever around here, why are you guys this good on the second night of back-to-backs when the stats over time say you're not supposed to be doing some of these things?
Spo always says it. The second night of back-to-back it stands for something. It's not everything, but it stands for something to be able to come, from Indiana last night, land, tough, just embarrassing loss in our organization. We thought that was a horrible loss last night to fly here and still come up with a game plan. And the game plan was really just to come out and play harder, obviously play smart, but play harder than them, outwork them. And we did that tonight. I thought every time we have a second night of a back-to-back, it feels like we come out with the right energy.
Tyler, Spo and Jaime both pointed to halftime as a very productive halftime. I think Jaime called it one of the best halftimes ever he's been part of since he got drafted here. What happened at halftime, and what was the message from you and Bam, and how did it propel you guys?
It was a productive halftime. We were able to get things done. So we were able to speak on things, eye-to-eye communication, and it led to felt like in the third quarter the ball was popping, the ball was moving, guys were getting stops and guys were flying around. We came out with a lot of energy in that second half, and we won. So.
Tyler, you guys had 30 fast break points while getting just 6 live ball turnovers, 6 steals. Usually those two things need to be a little bit more together. Why were you able to get so much in transition?
Joel's obviously a great offensive player who's draws fouls and does a great job of like manipulating the game and slowing it down. So we had an emphasis on just whether the ball goes in or not. Let's get the ball out and run, get in transition, make Joel get back on defense. Like you said, we didn't force a lot of turnovers or create a lot of deflections, but we were able to get stops, and on those stops, get out and run, beat them down the floor. And then even on their made baskets a couple times, we were to be able to beat them down the court.
Tyler Spoelstra kind of talking about the pent-up anger that you guys have had because of the way you guys have been playing the past couple weeks. Can you kind of speak to that and what maybe a win like this can kind of show?
Yeah, I try not to get too high and not too low in this league. It's a long season. I was hurt for more than half of the year, so some games you're obviously higher than others. We're obviously on a terrible stretch right now as a team, and I think just sticking with it. Understanding that it is a long season. Last week we won 7 straight. The next week we lost 7 straight. So who knows what next week looks like, and just continuing to trust in the process, believe that we have enough to achieve what we want to achieve, and it takes time. We just got to keep going.
You guys were in the zone for most of the game tonight. What effect do you think that had on their offense?
Our zone is, when we're flying around in that zone, it's a really good defense. We're able to, get them out of some of their actions that they like to get to. Obviously, they're a handful in man with PG, Maxey, and Embiid, and then shooting around it. So we're able to just take them out of their normal flow, their normal rhythm, get some stops. They missed a couple of threes, and then we're able to run in transition.
Tyler, you guys played probably the best that we've seen in this stretch of the ups and downs through the season, but knowing that, yes, it was a great win today, how do you guys keep that momentum going, especially what you guys were able to do in the second half, now knowing there's 6 games left of the regular season?
It's part of, like I said, not getting too high, not getting too low. We can't feel like we did something with this game right here. It's a good win for us, but there's another one coming up, and the next one is just as important as the last.
Tyler, we've seen you make big shots in fourth quarters. You also made a couple of defensive plays down the stretch in this one, the strip on Embiid that led, I think, to the Wiggins layup. How important is it to you to also make those kinds of plays on that end?
It's important. I try. That's all I do. Try on defense. Yeah, I give my effort on defense. That's all I can say.
Moving like a guy who played 42 on the second night of a back-to-back. Everyone sort of alluded to a spirited halftime, whatever the case was. What changed? What specifically? Was it frustration? Was it just urgency? What was it that fired you guys up for the third?
We just really need to get this win. We know it's at stake, and obviously that's what that halftime was. Understanding how we needed to play and doing what we needed to do to get the win, and we did that.
Spo was kind of talking about how obviously these past couple weeks there's been a lot of pent-up anger because of the disappointment of how you guys have been playing. Can you kind of speak to that? Of course, you've been very vocal about getting out of the play and stuff, but can you just talk about how that pent-up anger led to this performance tonight, especially on the defensive end?
You saw how we guarded, and we're capable of that. We need to do that every night, not just. It's crazy we did that on the second night of back-to-back. But that's what's required to get these W's, so that's what we're going to have to do.
And you guys were in zone about 60% of the time tonight, which was the second highest of the year. Why has that been so often the right coverage for you guys in the past month or so? And what has been so effective, especially when you've got like Pella and Jaime extending pressure at the top of it?
I I think the zone really gets us communicating, and then it's not the normal man-to-man that the NBA plays, and it's kind of like a curveball for us.
Bam, Jaime spoke at halftime how the team's leaders told us about halftime how the team's leaders spoke up and took control of the room. What was that moment like for you and Tyler to resettle everything and sort of get things back on track?
It's our responsibility. We want to win at the end of the day. That's one thing we do. We care, and obviously it's very disappointing when you drop games and you see the standing shift. But for us, it's taking ownership, and we did that today, and we gutted out a win.
Speaking of that halftime, as the captain of the team, did you kind of feel that sense of responsibility to say something to the team in that moment? Was that something that was planned, or kind of how did that kind of occur to you, I guess?
It was more so a feeling. It was more so a feeling, and obviously when not just only I speak, but when Tyler speaks, it moves the room. And to have your two cornerstones really move the room, and you see what that transferred to in the second half. We need more of that.
Seeing the way Tyler turned things around late offensively, come with those two big threes and everything. I guess with playing with Nexton for so long, do you notice, I guess, when things kind of shift for him when he sees one go in at that point in the game, and it's kind of a little bit of a different look offensively? I guess do you feel like playing next to him for this long has kind of allowed you to kind of read him in those spots?
Yeah, and we want that moment for Tyler. A guy, like I said before, and in many interviews, somebody that's been through what he's been through. It's not easy getting in the groove. So when you see him get in his groove, you want him to have those moments, and we want him to be aggressive. We want him to put his head down and see if he can get a bucket. And he got some big buckets late in the fourth.
Bam, from the halftime speeches to the second half of what you guys were able to do, how do you guys keep this going, knowing there's 6 games left?
I mean, knowing that we got 6 games left, that says it right there. Obviously, me and T need to be more vocal in these next 6, but just understanding it's gonna take that type of will we played with tonight on every game from here on out to get these W's.
Thank you.
Coach, huge response there in the fourth quarter. It seems like the energy and the defensive kind of intensity was up there with some of the kind of key points that you saw from the win.
There's no question about it. That's been a point of emphasis for our basketball team for a while. We can't even explain, what's happened in these losses defensively. But you could see it from the tip. Guys were making extraordinary efforts, multiple efforts, and that went all the way through, to the fourth quarter. And holding that team the way they've been playing, while they're healthy, holding them under 110 is something that's significant. We feel that's a team that presents a lot of different challenges with their shooting. Obviously, with Embiid and Maxey, can do a lot off the dribble. So it was good to see us have that response. And on the second night of a back-to-back, again, I don't know what our record is now, but maybe 15-4, something like that. That's something that we wanted to take the challenge on. Is to show that toughness. To find a way to win, and that resolve, showed through tonight.
Erik, I know you're not big on the statement stuff, but to follow up on Zach's point, it just seemed like the energy coming into the second half, whatever the first 5-6 minutes of the third quarter, something seemed different. Was it just recognizing the urgency of the moment? Like what was there?
No, but I would say, like, even in the first half, there were several moments where we were really, putting the pedal, to the metal. And, it started with defensively, and that led us into some great efforts in transition. But we had a really good halftime. I'll just leave it at that. We also have a lot of pent-up, anger and frustration. and disappointment. Collectively, we feel like, we're better than what we've been the last 2 weeks. It's been extremely frustrating. And tonight, everybody was able just to focus on the task at hand, and it was all the multiple efforts that we needed, and that led to, the karma of the game, which we've been talking about. You want to feel like you're worthy to win. And usually the teams that, are making those extraordinary efforts and playing with physicality, playing together, and you feel that sense of team. Our guys are really celebrating each other tonight. That usually ends up being the karma of the game. And we felt like we had that on our side tonight.
Bam and Tyler playing 42 minutes in the second night of a back-to-back. How much
Yeah.
does that represent kind of the sense of urgency right now for this
Yeah.
team, and how key were they down the stretch?
No question. I had warned Bam that it was probably going to be a 40-minute game tonight. And he's in tremendous physical condition right now. And, his competitive will, he set the tone for sure. At the beginning of the game, just his motor was outstanding, defensively, and then bust out dribbles, running the floor, doing everything with force. And then, it just became so important, in the fourth quarter, to have both of them on the floor for those final 12 minutes. Our backs are against the wall. Everybody knows what the deal is. We need everybody in that locker room, but we need to really lean on our main guys, right now.
A guy like Tyler, you always say shooters have to take their shots. He was 1 of 8 on threes. It seemed like he passed up a couple, maybe even that led to the turnovers. But what does it say in the 2 moments of truth to have that confidence, step into the 2 shots that basically turned the game?
Well, that's the way Tyler's been his whole time here, regardless of what he's done in the first 3.5 quarters. When you get to the final 6 minutes, he's proven time and time again that he's been able to make, big threes, big shots. And he did that. He created that separation with those back-to-back threes. He was just really competitive. You felt his will tonight. You felt that, that bond of 2 players that had played together for a long time. We followed Tyler and Bam's lead, tonight on both ends of the court. It was really their competitive will, and that feeling of, I really commend the team of having such a disappointing 2 weeks, and then to have guys that are really celebrating each other and having that kind of passion for each other through all that. That's usually when things fall apart. And I know it's just one game, but we certainly want to build on this. We know where we are. We know where we are in the standings and everything, but we want to build, these last 6 games.
A lot of times when you guys are sitting in your zone, you'll force a lot of turnovers and kind of run out off that, but you got 30 fast break points off just 6 steals while playing a lot of zone. So how did that formula kind of come together?
Just the motor and the energy. You felt the pace and the push. D. Mitch did a great job in those first 6 to 8 minutes, really pushing the tempo. And then you bring in Jaime, and that's the way he always plays. But it only works if everybody's running, right? And we know that they're a good defense team. They're a disruptive defense team. If you face their half-court defense, they can jam you up. So we knew we wanted to play, at our pace and get back to getting games on our terms, defending and then doing that. Look, we were trying to force deflections and turnovers, but they're pretty intentional about, what they're doing. But at least we were able to force misses and run off of those. Even on the makes, that was the problem. These last losses. It's a big part of our game is our transition. But you can't just bank on your transition taking the ball out of the net. It doesn't work like that. You have to get your more than fair share of stops. Where you're pushing on misses and deflection steals, and then you can still push tempo on makes. And that's what it was tonight.
We talk a lot about pace and defense in terms of the identity of this team, but how important is also the offensive rebounding for this group as part of your sort of formula?
Yeah, that is. And we haven't been doing that great. the last couple of weeks. It's all those relief points, and that leads into, that category of being worthy to win, like making those extra efforts. It takes a lot of effort, to crash 3 or 4 guys. You don't know if you're going to get the ball, but you have to make that effort. And then if you don't get the ball, guess what you got to do? You got to sprint back, and now it's probably instead of a 70-foot sprint, now it's a 90-foot sprint. But our offense has been better when we're running and we're getting, extra relief points with second chance.
Speaking of those relief points, I felt like, specifically in the second and third quarters, there was a lot of Pella, kind of, whether it was a tip in, whether it was a back cut, all that kind of stuff. I guess how big was that in terms of maybe when the offense bogged down, he was able to kind of save the offense a little bit, and just how much, I guess, is that coachable, I guess, in a way where reactionary stuff, reactionary offensive plays, is that something you just have or you don't?
Yes, it is coachable. That's been part of, what we've been developing this year. The way he does it, is next level. It's at an extremely high level, and he already had a lot of those instincts. I don't know how or why. He just has a great knack for, when to do it. Some guys will do it because we're, it's in our program to do it. He has the knack to do it just as defender turns his head. It reminds me of another player, which I don't need to name, but he's just great, off ball, and we were getting jammed up. Those were relief points, those cuts, and the cuts that led to offensive rebounds, but also his running. He does a lot of those X factor things, that you need when you're particularly when you're facing a good team like Philly. All right, thank you.